All right, welcome everybody to another game breakdown. My name is Nick.
Mike.
And Travis.
But anyway, we're going to be doing Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild as this time's game breakdown. A little bit more serious of a game than Hello Kitty Cruisers. It was released on April 1st. But anyway, we're going to be, one of the reasons why we actually decided to do this game breakdown is because all three of us have a very, very different perspective on this game, and we realized that once we had Travis talk about it as Travis's most overrated game, or
most disappointing game.
Disappointing game, that's what it was. So we realized that we have a lot of thoughts to talk about it, and we feel like it'd be better to dedicate a nice video to it. Mm-hmm. So, from my perspective, I still play Breath of the Wild fairly frequently. I found all of the shrines. I'm up to around 215 Korok seeds or so, and I believe Mike's played it less. I don't know if you have all the shrines. Are you, like,
yeah.
Am I right?
I've just beaten it, but I've probably only done, like, maybe half the shrines. Okay. And I have no idea on Korok seeds. I think I collected maybe 10 of them total. So.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it's very different there. Yeah. And Travis, would you like to explain your what have you done in the game?
I did the tutorial shrines. I got to like the Kokuriko village, and then I'm like, more Mario, please.
Mario Odyssey absorbed his life from there. So yeah, so we have very different perspectives when coming into this game. So as we're going to start this game breakdown, one of the first things we're going to start about, at least for me, I think is a good place to start on, is the transition from the Zelda games before, when you're talking about the typical, you have the dungeon item, you have to find the dungeon item to beat the boss, you find the dungeon map, you find the compass, and then you basically have the showdown against the boss and you move on to the next one. The kind of Zelda formula that's been stuck with it since like the original Zelda games, and now with Breath of the Wild, you kind of have dungeons with the divine beasts, but they're not technically like the typical Zelda dungeons. Like, you're not even trying to find a dungeon item. Basically, what they do in Breath of the Wild is they give you all your crap in the beginning and say, "All right, have fun, go explore." So, what do you think about this quote-unquote evolution or reimagining of Zelda?
Yeah, because I wouldn't call it an evolution, because I love Breath of the Wild. It's a top 5 Zelda game for me, but I think I still prefer Wind Waker over it. I still prefer Twilight Princess over it, and I still prefer Ocarina of Time over it, because I like that dungeon style. And like the dungeons in this game, I wasn't a fan of them. I felt like the design on them it looked exactly the same across all the different dungeons. They were short. I feel like the puzzles in a couple of them were cool, but I wasn't a huge fan. But I think that's because they weren't trying to do the original Zelda style. That's why it felt so different. So That's why, the only thing I want to say right now is that's why I don't see it as an evolution, because I prefer the older style better. But for what they were going for, I liked what Breath of the Wild did. I thought it was cool. The shrines too got repetitive. That's kind of the theme for the game, is I really liked it. I just feel like there wasn't enough to mix it up for me, if that makes sense.
That's fair. What do you think, Travis?
Well, since literally the only Zelda game I've actually completed in my whole lifetime is Wind Waker.
Which is a pretty solid Zelda game still.
It is a solid Zelda game. I did enjoy it, and I think that did help me in actually wanting to beat it. But it definitely has a different feel to it because of, a whole bunch of reasons. Like, it does give you all of the items right away, which I do like, because it's like, hey, how do I want to approach this? Do I just want to drop a bomb in the middle of everything and explode everything just for fun? Right. Or do I want to actually take this strategically and take them out one by one stealthily, yada yada? But, like, I haven't even gotten to any dungeons, so I can't even talk about the differences in that. But I've heard that, like, the dungeons in this one are significantly less, because a shrine is kind of like a mini dungeon in itself. So, because there's so many of them, it kind of replaced having a more in-depth dungeon. But I do miss, like, oh man, the water temple was so hard. Like, that dungeon was just so long. But I did it all by myself. Whereas this one, it's like, yeah, I did this one first. It was kind of hard, but, I mean, as long as I did this, it was fine. And
then,
I
know what you're kind of... Sorry, go on.
What was I going to say? Yeah, so it was basically like, because you had literally everything from the start, you didn't feel all that accomplished when you actually beat the main temples, because you gained nothing from it, whereas all the other ones, you got that dungeon, or the dungeon item, so you felt like you did something with your time, versus just like, oh, I did an optional thing and now I'm a little stronger because I can, like, upgrade stamina, or I increased health, or whatever you got from the dungeon.
Yeah, I think I know what you're trying to touch on there. The fact that the sense of gratification that you get when you finish a divine beast versus when you finish like a temple from before, like say the Dodongo Cavern in Ocarina of Time, or say the giant tower or whatever in Majora's Mask. It didn't really give you that much. Like that gave you a great sense of accomplishment. Like you really worked for that. But the divine beasts, maybe it was just to me, it just kind of felt like Like it was good. It still offered a challenge with some of like the checkpoints or whatever you call it to try to find. But yeah, it never really gave me like a really big like, whew, that was awesome. But like in certain dungeons, like thank God I beat it.
Right.
And like I know that like that feeling seemed a little lacking in those kind of aspects. And I see what you're saying, Mike, about like the repetition of some of those shrines as well, because a lot of them you're facing these mini guardians, and like they stand no chance compared to like the other guardians. And once you know how to beat one of them, you basically know how to defeat them all. Right. So I'm absolutely with you on that. It seems like there's kind of like a disconnect there. And I mean, I would argue that the guardians roaming around Hyrule are actually way more difficult than the ones that you actually face for the shrine challenges.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I would agree with that too.
So yeah. So I mean, I would at least say when it comes down to it, I love the fact, at least the philosophy of the Zelda game, where instead of, at least in my mind, there's something almost addictive about the Zelda games, kind of what they would do, like giving you the dungeon item and how much more of the dungeon would open up once you get that item. I thought it was almost like addictive, and I loved it, and I would never get tired of it. But I do love the philosophy of, we're going to let you explore and get engrossed in this world, which I'm still engrossed in, by giving you these, like going through the tutorial shrines, giving you a lot of the items that you're going to need, and letting you find the rest of them on your own. I love that idea, but it's just one of those things where the addictive nature of those dungeons, I didn't find myself I found myself wanting to find shrines and wanting to do all the shrines, but it didn't really have the idea of me wanting to complete the shrines like I wanted to complete the dungeons in the other Zelda games, if you know what I'm trying to say there.
No, exactly. I mean, I think the coolest dungeon was the Yiga clan hideout, which isn't really like one of the main dungeons, because it was different. It didn't look like any of the other dungeons. The whole idea of it was you had to sneak through it without getting caught, and you had to use bananas, which is hilarious to like...
Oh, that was hysterical.
Yeah, to like maneuver your way around, because they all love bananas. So that dungeon was really cool because it did something unique. That's my only problem with the actual Divine Beast ones, is they didn't feel unique, you know? They all felt like you did the same thing. And I think that's one of the other problems with the game, is it didn't have the hook shot, it didn't have the boomerang, didn't have any of that. So it basically had to use the same...
Well, it did have the boomerang, not in the same way, though.
Right, well, that's the thing.
It had some boomerangs.
Right, but you don't use it, you know? Like,
that's
you didn't
true.
need it to beat any of the dungeons. And I think that's where this one falls short compared to the other ones, in my opinion, is like, it was fun doing the water temple and, you know, having to use the item you get in it, or, you know, when you get the hook shot, having to use it to solve the puzzles of the dungeon. This one, it was you either using the bombs, the time stop, or, you know, any of those ones. What is that thing called? I forgot what it's called, the thing you use.
Magnesis, I think?
Yeah, basically like all of those different things, which you get at the beginning of the game. So you're using those same stuff throughout the whole game, which is why it's hard for them to mix it up, you know? And so I get it, but at the same time, I think that's why this one's still kind of lower for me in the Zelda spectrum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think me and Mike can both agree on it, because I know we've talked about this before off podcast, where we can definitely understand why they made the decisions to do the things that they did. It's just one of those things, as like a lifetime Zelda fan, you might not 100% agree with those decisions, which will be in my next topic, unless you guys have something else to say about this one, about like the dungeons, the philosophy of this game versus the other Zelda games.
Yeah, so one more thing I wanted to add was something that I didn't even like think about until I read the comments of the most disappointing game one. I forgot who exactly it was, but they were like, I do agree with Travis, because they also like got rid of basically every single enemy that's ever existed in Zelda, and then replaced them with like these villains, but like they never changed throughout the game. Like it's always the same type of, what are they, Duringo something?
Moblins and Bokoblins?
Sure.
I like Duringos.
Duringo. I don't know where I got that one from. Anyway, you know, stupid people eat rocks.
Right.
Fat people eat rocks. So like even the enemies, it starts becoming stale, because it's either guardians or those dudes that just attack you throughout the whole time. So it's like, am I even actually going to a new environment? Sure, I need to eat this spicy meal so I can be in the cold, but like, does that really make me care that I'm like progressing? Whereas Zelda is like, okay, now this is the Skulltula area, where it's like, okay, this is different from like the rest of this level that I've been doing.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you're trying to say. So I will say going... oh, sorry. Do you have anything else to add on really quick?
I think that sums it up for that part.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to something else. And the one that me and Mike are both kind of... At least I know we're kind of on the same page. I don't know about Travis. But this is about the music of Breath of the Wild. And for those of you who are huge, like back in the day Zelda fans, my gosh, the adventure, or the sense of adventure you'd get from these soundtracks were just amazing. And though again, it's one of those things where at least me, I understand why Breath of the Wild made the soundtrack like it did, like the very peaceful sounds of nature and whatnot, but it never captured that sense of adventure. And I mean, I don't think that's what they were going for in this game either. They were going for the sense of you can explore, you can just kind of wander around and enjoy yourself, and the sounds of nature I think might complement that a little better. But it still left me wanting like a big adventure, at least like kind of sense of questing in there.
Yeah,
but
so you just
I
wanted
never
some like
got
Indiana
it from the music.
Jones in that background, right?
Yeah, something like that. But the only time when I actually got that was like around Hyrule Castle. But I mean, it just left me wanting so much more there, but not in a good way. Like there's times in games where you're like, oh, I want to see more of this world because it was so much fun and I want to keep playing it. It made me want more because it seemed like the sound design, even though I understand why they did it, just felt lacking. So what do you guys say?
Well, yeah, because I'll agree, because I will say, like, I'm as huge Zelda fan, and I know you are too, Nick. So we're biased because we're looking at this saying, well, these other Zelda games had great music. So from an unbiased non-Zelda fan perspective, what the game did was great. You know, like you said, with the nature and the ambience, it fits the environment perfectly. But I think we speak this way because Zelda games are like known for this awesome soundtrack that you can sit and listen to. I have no desire to go on YouTube and look up a Breath of the Wild soundtrack because none of the songs really stand out to me. I can't like remember a single tune from the game. And I put in like almost 100 hours into the game. So, but there's no tune that I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that tune, the way I can with Wind Waker or Ocarina of Time or something. So I think that's the difference. And again, you know, Breath of the Wild is more like Skyrim, I think, is a more fair comparison. Because Skyrim also doesn't have that many incredible tunes outside of its main theme, because the ambience is the point. You know, you hear the snow, you hear the animals walking around, which works really well for this game. So, I don't know, I think if you take out Zelda, what this game did with its ambience was great. It's just, when you think of it as a Zelda game, it is a bit sad that, you know, they didn't have these incredible tunes. Because you look at Mario Odyssey, knocked its soundtrack out of the park, you know? And it's like, well, Breath of the Wild could have been like the latest and greatest Zelda soundtrack, but, you know, they chose a different path, which worked for what the game was, but it's disappointing because it's Zelda.
Yep, I would agree.
And now from the non-Zelda player's point of view, I'm like, well, because I definitely totally understand that, like, music has always been a big central part around Zelda. I mean, frickin' Ocarina of Time and Wind Waker, you're literally playing an instrument to, you know, do things on top of, you know, others. I haven't played any of the others. I don't know. But, like, obviously, because music is a central component to it, they have to, like, put an emphasis that their music is good, whereas this one, as far as I know, you don't pull up a random instrument and start playing to open up doors and stuff.
Right.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
you don't.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me that the soundtrack is a little disappointing to, you know, the fellow Zelda fans. But for me, I'm like, you know, it's good background music. Like, it doesn't annoy me.
Right.
Which is basically how I see games. It's as long as it's not a bad soundtrack where it's hurting my ears and I want to turn it down. I don't really care. So to me, the music wasn't bad, but like you guys said, because I'm not exactly a veteran of Zelda, it makes sense that I'm not too disappointed in it because, you know, what do I care?
Yeah, I mean, like the sound design, like it made sense, but yeah, when you have like a title there like Zelda, you expect a great adventurous soundtrack, one that would make you want to do it. Like I can hear like that Hyrule theme or Hyrule Field theme just in my head, just as you're like walking back and forth, and it makes you really pumped to keep running around, and it gets your heart rate up too. But this one is just kind of like, just relax. Do some exploring, which is not a bad thing at all. I mean, they're going for a different kind of game there because they thought the Zelda formula was kind of getting stale. But yeah, it is a very kind of different approach to the music and to the soundtrack of the game than a normal Zelda game is used to.
Right.
So it's yeah, I'm with you, Mike. It's one of those things where the only reason why we say this is because it's a Zelda game. If this came out as a completely different game and maybe had a different character at the spotlight, it wouldn't really bother us at all. So. All right, so we're ready to move on to the next topic?
Sure.
And here's where we get controversy: weapon breaking. So, for those of you who haven't known yet, at least this is actually one of the things I heard people complaining before I started the game. After you use your weapon for a certain amount of time, it will break. And that pissed a lot of people off. And I'm sure that I wasn't the only one when I first discovered this mechanic. I was actually one of the big features in the game that you have to plan around. So, what do you guys have to say about that weapon breaking
Well,
mechanic?
for me, it really did annoy me. Because, like, I understand the amount of weapons you pick up are, like, greater than the amount that you actually break. But every single time I went into a battle and my weapon broke, and I had to, like, go through that pause menu to find a different weapon, it totally, like, uncapsulated me from the actual battle that was going on. To me, just being like, ugh, what weapon do I not really care about? So I'll just break it during this stupid fight.
Yep.
So it just took me out of it. Like, I don't even mind that the weapons broke, but to me, they happen so frequently that having to go through that actual menu to select a new weapon once it broke was just annoying to me. Mm-hmm. From the, I think, 5 hours of Zelda that I played.
Right. Yeah, I will say one of my favorite things about like games like Skyrim or Fallout is like you find this awesome legendary weapon and you can like use it and spam it to your heart's content because it's fun to use. Breath of the Wild completely got rid of that by doing this. The Master Sword is the only weapon in the game that doesn't break, and there's really no other like legendary weapon in that sense. You know, like in Fallout 4, there's this awesome sniper rifle that when I find, I love using it. I don't have to worry about it breaking. And other games where weapons do break usually have like repair systems. This game doesn't really have anything good like that, you know? So with this game, it's like you just use it till it's broken, which is unfortunate because there's a lot of weapons in this game that I really like and I would love to use more that I'm just afraid to use because I know it's limited. And if I use it too much, it'll be gone.
Mm-hmm. And then there's certain items as well where you have, like, I believe one of the Gerudo swords that you can get as well. If you want to repair it, you have to give up like a really, really good useful item like a diamond or something like that for them to repair it, to use that item again, which kind of gets tedious and not even worth keep repairing the item at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, at least in my mind, I'm actually one of the people who's a big defender of the weapon breaking mechanic because again, it's one of those conscious design choices why you understand why they made it. They want you to experiment with a whole bunch of different items, a whole bunch of different kinds of bows and arrows and shields. So after a while, one of them's going to break, and then you're going to need to use a different one. And so it wants to keep you experimenting throughout the game. And I think that's such a cool idea. But at the same time, it was such a staple of the Zelda games where I guess you don't actually break the Master Sword. It loses its energy for like 10 minutes, and then it'll come back after a while.
Right.
But some of the fun is what Mike said. You swing your sword around, and you have a blast with it because it's like one of the most powered up items in the game. But like, there's items stronger than the Master Sword in the game. Like, even when the Master Sword's like, it can like double its power when it's facing certain enemies. But then you have one of like the Lionel Crushers, and it makes a Master Sword look like crap. Like,
right.
It's definitely not the most powerful sword in the game, or not the most powerful weapon in the game, and it doesn't give you the feeling that that's the weapon that you should have equipped when you're facing these really big bosses.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know. My quip is like if you found a weapon that was extremely strong, that did a bunch of damage, your first instinct would not be, ooh, I'm going to go try this out right now. It's going to be, ooh, I better store this away and save it for a time when I really need it, which is unfortunate because you find this awesome item you want to use, but you can't use it for that reason, you know?
Yeah.
It'd be like if Pokemon, you were never allowed to like heal your Pokemon. So if you caught like Mewtwo, you'd be like, okay, I have to wait until I'm actually facing Ash,
right,
to be using him. Otherwise, I might screw this up.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about Red, right? Like the end of Gold version.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, technically, yeah, still Ash, but anyway, Ash grown up. But yes, so I'm with you, but I love the weapon breaking. I don't technically love it. I don't mind it. Like, I'm actually a huge defender of the weapon breaking mechanic because I understand why they did it. And there's definitely, at least when I was playing through this game at the beginning the second time, there's easily a point where, like, right when you start the game, where you're going to be picking up more items than you actually need, and so you can actually toss the ones that you don't need as much, and you keep picking up the other ones. Finding weapons does not become an issue, but it's one of those things where when you have a limited resource to do combat with, people are going to be pissed if you ever have a limited resource to do so. And it kind of becomes like, is it really limited when you have the Master Sword? Because technically you can just wait a little while and then it'll come back. But when you have a limited resource to do any kind of combat, people are going to be mad. So at least that's what I think. So I personally didn't mind it. Like, I still have my inventory almost all the way full every single time. And the only time when I have to use more than one weapon is when I see, like, one of the, like, the more complicated Lionels, and I want to, like, try to item hunt or something like that.
Right.
And it's fun. And I really didn't mind it, and it doesn't become an issue after a while. But for those who were, again, who love the kind of old Zelda formula, it does take an adjustment. When I first played this game, I played it for a little while, played the tutorials, shrines, but I'm like, this is a lot of new stuff, so I took myself a couple days and I didn't play the game. I played Mario Odyssey just so I can take some time to figure it out and not just go blindly charge into it and just be like, this is stupid, I want the old formula back. So for people who really want to get engrossed in the game, you can't get as involved in the game for this Zelda game as compared to the other ones. The other ones, they can throw you in and you'll feel at home immediately. This one takes a little getting used to. It doesn't mean it's bad by any means. It just takes a while to warm up to it.
Yeah, but then the question is, how long are you supposed to give a game? Because, like, we say that, but it's like, okay, so someone's 2 hours into the game and they say, I'm not enjoying this, and then you say, we just have to play further. But at what point do we say, all right, maybe this game just isn't for you, you know?
Never play Dragon Quest VII if you think that.
Right, well, because that's how I feel, because, like, Travis is, like, what, 4 or 5 hours into it, and
Yeah,
says he doesn't like
I'm
it?
at least 5 hours in, and then I'm like, I still haven't gotten grabbed, and I know, like, this is a 100+ hour adventure, but if I don't enjoy it until hour 30...
Yeah, that's
like,
a problem.
That's a long time for me to not be having fun to start having fun.
Right.
I didn't start enjoying Dragon Quest VII until around 15 to 20 hours in.
But wouldn't
I would
that
not
in
have
theory
the patience for that.
Yeah, wouldn't that in theory make it a bad game then?
You have to play Dragon Quest VII. There's certain things that are awesome in there. But anyway, I did a review on that. That's not the focus on the discussion. But I'm with you. There is like a certain time limit where you have to do so. I hear Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is really bad for it too. It's like you have to wait like 15 to 20 hours to get really involved in the story. And what's different is there's certain people who like that kind of approach, that kind of ease you into the game and kind of hold your hand for a longer time. That just doesn't, I think, fit the kind of games that we like to play. But there are games out there that do that. And Dragon Quest VII wasn't going for kind of some big action sequence. They're like, this is a kind of a lighthearted game. They want you to get used to the lovable characters, lovable towns, and just go into it from there. Breath of the Wild, I think, is doing something similar, where they want to encapsulate you with its gameplay, but you have to love the gameplay first to do so.
Right.
So you have to kind of find your love and find your appreciation for it before you get into, I love this game and I want to keep playing it. I want to find all the shrines. I want to upgrade all my gear, etc.
No, yeah, that makes sense, I guess. I think it just depends.
So it's
you know. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, it really. Yeah, sorry, it's you.
No, I didn't really have a point, so.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it really depends on the kind of person that you are when you're playing Breath of the Wild. Again, these are all design choices, and you can understand why they made them. It's just something that when you play them as a fan of some of the older Zelda games, where you kind of are confused, like, not really sure. Like, I don't really like it as much, but you can see why they did it. Because let's face it, if you had all these other item slots and you got the Master Sword, you wouldn't be using other items.
Right.
Like, if Master Sword never ran out of energy, you would not be using other items.
That's true. Yeah, you bring up a good point. But I think, I don't know. Well, because that's true, and that's also not true. Because, like, in a game like this, or in a game like Skyrim and Fallout, are the games I always compare it to, you can make weapons that are different. You know, like, you might use the Master Sword, or you might like the Biggoron sword instead, in the case of, like, Ocarina of Time. So there are ways you can put in other weapons that, like, yeah, the Master Sword is the legendary weapon, but we also have these weapons that are really cool to use. So I don't know if that's necessarily the case. You can have a weapon that's stronger, but just, like, bigger, you know, or heavier. So, you know, this weapon does more damage, but it's heavier. So, I don't know. There are ways to work around that, I think.
Yeah, okay, I can see that. It is definitely probably one of the most, I think, at least in my mind, one of the most divisive issues with Breath of the Wild.
Right.
But, again, it's still one game of the year for 2017.
It's true.
So,
and I will say the weapon breaking thing is not a deal breaker. Like, you know, I'm talking about it like it's so bad. I'm just doing it to play devil's advocate, you know. I don't mind it all that much. It didn't ruin the experience for me. It was just something, if it wasn't there, I would have liked it more. But, you know, I didn't mind it.
Yeah, and for me, like, I completely understand that, like, I still have never had something that was not a full inventory. So I completely get that, like, it's not like they give you a very rare resource, and that resource that you get will break instantly. So it's like, should I even try to fight? But it's just more like, it annoys me that when I'm in the middle of combat that my thing broke, and then I have to, like, scroll through a menu to, like, think of what should I possibly get next. So it kind of just takes me out of it.
Yeah, no, I can see it. It kind of breaks the immersion in a way. So I guess we can move on from the weapon break mechanic. So another thing about Breath of the Wild that is very interesting is that one, at least for me, it's like I feel like it's worth noting even for a little bit, is the kind of the gear that you get. I mean, we talked about these other weapons, but you also get like you have like the Hyrule armor, like the Knight's armor. You have the different like you have to sneak into the Gerudo city by like dressing like a Gerudo and whatnot, because only the Gerudo girls are allowed in. So basically, Link cross dresses to go in, and it's really funny. But like you also have a way to upgrade these items, which you were able to upgrade certain items. Like in Skyward Sword, you were able to upgrade like shields and certain items as well, and maybe to carry more arrows, but never to the extent of like in Breath of the Wild, where you can like upgrade them a lot more, and you kind of are able to pick and choose what kind of armor you have to fit the situation at hand.
I love it.
But yeah, I personally love the armor upgrading and weapon upgrading as well, but it is different. So I'm wondering, like, do you think that that's a welcome change to the Zelda formula, or do you think that's unwelcome?
I do, because like the collecting system, as far as like finding all the bugs and stuff you need to upgrade, is like so well done. As far as like, you know, you have the navigation that like will tell you when they're nearby and helps you find them. I think that's perfect, because otherwise finding little salamanders on the floor would be the most tedious and frustrating thing ever. But the game does it so like hunting and grinding to like collect the items to upgrade is a lot of fun, and I really enjoy doing it. So I have no problem with that. If the game continues doing it that way, where, you know, hunting for it's not tedious and it's kind of simple to find it, I'm all for it.
Oh yeah, there's so many times where like you don't have to go very far off the beaten path to find like the mushrooms or whatever that you need, or maybe to at least make the elixirs too, because cooking is kind of like the same way. I don't know why, but cooking is one of my favorite things to do in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
I absolutely adore it. And just finding like certain recipes, like if you look in my Breath of the Wild playthrough right now, like the one that I'm still working on, like all the Korok seeds that I can find, you will find a lot of different recipes that max fill your hearts and plus hearts later, because I just loved experimenting with all the stuff that I found.
Right, exactly.
And then I would go buying some other things, and I would keep experimenting, and it was like, I don't know why, it was one of the most fun parts that I had in Breath of the Wild. Like, I was like, I can do this dungeon, but I'm going to make sure I'm extra prepared. I never used ate any of my dishes, but I mean, like, it was awesome. I mean, I enjoyed the crap out of the cooking.
Yeah.
And I wish that the tutorials actually did a better job than just say, you can make an elixir to go into the cold. I feel like that's just a little too basic, but I can understand why.
Yeah, I think that's also why some people say it has a slow start, because they don't explain a lot of it. So at the beginning, you're kind of lost in like, well, this is weird. How do I survive the cold? Yada, yada. I think once you figure the game out, the game doesn't hold your hand at all. So I think once you figure it out, it gets a lot more fun. It's just, it can be hard to figure out at times. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Travis, did you have trouble figuring it out?
Well, I completely understood the whole cooking thing, and like I went into the dude's hut and found that whatever the fire hot pepper recipe was, which allowed me to actually run through the thing. So like when I found things, I'm like, okay, I'll try to find a place to cook this, and then, you know, have all of these things. So like I have some, but I think it's mostly like I haven't found the like really good stuff to cook up, or I haven't found the right concoction. But like since I'm only 5 hours in, I'm not expecting to have the, you know, this will refill 6 hearts and yada yada. I was more concerned
hearts,
with
please.
I know. But when you only have 3, you know, that's a lot.
Yeah,
Fair point.
That's true. That's true. So I do want to mention a couple more things, definitely, because another thing that I definitely think needs mentioning is, one, it's kind of gonna go in hand. One is
you can sprint.
Kind of change. Well, you can kind of do that in Skyward Sword, but one is the kind of the different kind of change that they made to Zelda and the cutscenes with the voice acting. And I will say this: Breath of the Wild Zelda is probably my favorite Zelda in any Zelda game, and the voice acting I think was outstanding.
Let's just say it right now: Zelda has a nice butt. We all want to say it.
Well, this is like the first significant Zelda game that has voice acting. I mean, I don't count Wand of Gamelon, Faces of Evil, whatever those CDI games are.
Yeah.
But like this is like the true Zelda game that I imagine when I don't try to block out other Zelda games that were officially licensed that had significant voice acting, and it was done very well.
Yeah, it was.
I think it was
Phantom
done
Hourglass?
very well. No, Phantom Hourglass was actually like a decent game. I just hate on it because it didn't live up to my standards. Wand of Gamelon is just hot garbage.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
I agree.
Well, Mike, what do you think about the voice acting?
Yeah, I was gonna say I loved the voice acting. I was a fan of it from the day they announced it. I'm just a fan of voice acting in general. I've never had a problem with it at all. I'm just glad they didn't like give link lines because that would have been really weird. But
yeah,
I like the fact that they added that in because I think it adds to the world, you know. And I will say this game's good because the English voice actors I thought were like extremely well. I know Final Fantasy games sometimes have the complaint that the English voice actors suck, and so people just listen to the Japanese ones. But I loved the English ones in this game, so I had no problem with the voice acting at all.
I forget. Travis, were you at the point where you heard some voice acting too?
I heard some voice acting because after you do the tower, he talks to you a little bit, and then you hear like Zelda call out to you. So like, I pretty much only have that cutscene, I'm pretty sure, when it comes to voice acting. But I too always like cutscenes and stuff. Like Halo had a million of them, and I loved Master Chief because of it, because he was just so badass.
Yeah, and I think it was at least for me, like they were at least, if I remember this correctly, I think Miyamoto and like the main people who were integral in the Zelda games were kind of reluctant to do so, and weren't really thinking like voice acting was like a necessity for Zelda games. And though I agree it's not really a necessity, I think it was pulled off very well here, and I will be absolutely okay with seeing more of it in the future. And it's just such a huge rarity to see in a Zelda game, which is why it did take some adjusting for that too, but I was just like, it was very easy to go in from there. But I felt myself re-watching those memories because like, oh my gosh, they got me.
Yeah, some of them
got
were
me tearing up on
good.
some of them. Oh yeah. Like Travis, if you don't end up playing this game more, please, you got to look at those cutscenes because they're outstanding.
Oh, I put in the money to get the game, and I also put in the money to get the DLC stuff for it. So I'm going to beat it eventually, whether I like it or not. Because there's $80 in that shit.
That's funny.
Oh yeah. Well, as what Travis just said, we're on to our last point. Is that's the DLC, and we give Nintendo a lot of crap about this game's DLC, but.
I
what
disagree
do you guys
with
think
it
about
entirely
it?
because it was announced before the game was even out.
Hard mode is not DLC either. That's stupid.
No.
Yeah. I feel like we do have to mention it though.
Hard mode,
doing, like,
if it is
breakdown.
DLC, it is free DLC that you just get.
Right. The DLC itself and like what's contained in it is good. They just shouldn't be charging as much as they are for it. The hard mode should have been free, and like the extra little stuff should have been like maybe $5 max. They're way overcharging for what they're giving.
I think they just know that they can capitalize off the fact that it's such a big game and people are still playing it, and they're gonna keep playing it. So
they did the same exact thing with Smash Bros. They way overcharged for that, knowing people were gonna buy the extra characters and stuff. They just
who was a sucker to do that? This guy.
All of us.
Yeah, all of us.
It's just like, yeah, I want that extra dungeon. I want those extra characters because it makes me not get bored of it as quick. So
right.
It's like,
I haven't even gotten close to bored of Breath of the Wild. I don't even know how many hours.
I think I already had that point, which is why I stopped playing it, because I'm like, I just know I need to get a couple more things to get a good stamina bar, and then I can work on my health a little bit, and then it'll be great.
Yeah, I had that point with the shrines, because like with the shrines, it's like, do I really want to do another shrine with another ball that I have to stop time with and then knock it into a hole over and over again? So, you know, with the actual main story, I never felt that way. And running around the environment, I didn't. It's just with the shrines, I definitely said, you know what, I don't want to do any more shrines.
Yeah. Okay. Actually, I know we're kind of long on this, but I mean, this is a huge game.
True.
So I actually want to squeeze in two other points. I thought I was just gonna only squeeze in one, but one of the ones is gonna be on the puzzles and how they differ from the other Zelda games, because most of the puzzles revolved around like certain dungeon items, like say the arrow or the hook shot, to solve certain puzzles and everything. But this one kind of deviates from that a little bit and kind of only focuses on the certain ones that you have with your Sheikah Slate. And the other one that I want to point is the final boss, which honestly to me was the least fun part of the entire game, which pains me to say it, because why is the final showdown with Ganon that's supposed to be so epic and the climb into the Hyrule Castle supposed to be so awesome, and then nothing?
It's garbage.
Before I start ranting about how crap that was, what do you guys think?
Should I like not be listening?
Well, I don't want to spoil it regardless for people that haven't played it, but yeah, the ending was garbage. I think we can leave it at that. I didn't like it at all.
Yeah, ending is crap. But so we'll move on to the puzzle design really fast.
So what you're saying is I can put in 100 hours just to be disappointed?
100 hours of fun, and then one small point of disappointment. But anyway, yeah. So I do want to talk about the puzzles then, and how they kind of differ, because I thought they're really creative, and they actually they didn't feel like typical Zelda puzzles, and I really did enjoy that fact. So again, I know people can see like, oh, it's just pushing a ball into a hole or doing some things with the wind and everything, and I was just like, I actually enjoyed it a lot. I really loved the fact that every single time that like I was entering, if it was like a dungeon puzzle, I love the fact that when I was going into it, like I knew that it was gonna have to cause me to think differently than the other ones before it.
Yeah.
Some of the shrines weren't as good. It was just the mini guardians, but I did appreciate the fact that like, especially, I mean, maybe not as much on the tilting ones, but I did like the fact that it like I didn't think the same way as I did when I approached other Zelda games.
I get what you're saying, and I loved the puzzles too. At the first 10 times I did it, and then maybe the first 20. It's just the fact that they didn't do enough to mix it up, so they kept using the same sort of ideas for like 70, 80, 90 times. And eventually it was like, okay, yeah, I've seen this song and dance before. You know, I know to put the ball in it. The first few times it is great, like you said. It's innovative, it's fun. But I think because of the lack of items, it just felt like you were doing the same type of puzzle over and over again.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, so I know we're long on this, so I guess we'll wrap it up. So do you guys have any closing thoughts before I do mine?
I'll end it by saying that, you know, I feel like we were critical of the game. I'm just so critical of it because it got so much praise, and I love the game too. I think it's just fun.
I love it.
Yeah, it's just fun to like poke it and see, you know, but these are things they can improve for the next game. This was their first time really trying something like this, and I think it was a success. I think a lot of people just went into it. I feel like it got a little bit too much praise. I don't know if it deserved all the praise and gush it got. It's a great game. I think it's deserving of a 9 out of 10. Is it a 10 out of 10 perfect game? I don't think so. Not by a long shot. There's room for improvements, and we listed those, but I still will say I would highly recommend this game to anyone playing it. If you like these open worlds, exploring the environment's a lot of fun. It might get repetitive after a while, but a lot of the repetition comes from doing the optional collectible stuff. So if you just don't do that stuff, I think you'll love the game. And we didn't talk about it much, but the story's great as far as like the memories and stuff go. I think all that's so worth it. So I would recommend it still.
Yeah, sorry, kind of thought we touched on that more on the philosophy of the game and like the transition from the other ones. But anyway, what are your closing thoughts on it, Travis?
I do want to point, I do not think this is a bad game by any means. Like, it does everything it was going for phenomenally. But, you know, like Mike said, like I was just kind of critical of it because I think every single review video I've ever watched of Zelda was like 10 out of 10, 9.5 out of 10. So I was like, wow, this game is going to just blow my freaking mind away. And then I was playing it, I'm like, yeah, this is fun. Like, this is cool. I can do this thing. But overall, I was just not, you know, blown out of the water 10 out of 10. So then I'm like, I'm just going to go play something else. And then I just keep buying more and more and more and more and more and more games. And Zelda just keeps going a little more behind in the to-do list.
Right.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah.
I don't know, like I feel like with sorry Travis, did you finish? I don't want to.
Yeah, so I just want to reiterate, I don't think it's a bad game. I just you know,
Yeah, I'm going to personally start off my closing thoughts with, I personally love the game. I think it's fantastic. I still play it every now and then, and I love basically every second that I played. Unlike Mike, though, I might say that it's like a 9.5. I might even bump it up to that 10, just because of the fact of all the enjoyment that I get out of it. And honestly, I don't know what it is about it, but the world did encapsulate me more than some of the other Zelda worlds that I've played. And I don't think it was the fact of like graphical power or anything. It was just the fact that it was such a like different experience that I've had, but it was still a Zelda game at its core.
I think it was the fact that you're like, hey, that looks like a cool mountain. I'm gonna start climbing it, and then you're on top of it, and you're like, this is so awesome.
Yeah, the lack of boundaries
honestly,
was incredible.
Like, the fact that like it basically plays to that that young exploratory instinct that I had was the best part about it to me. And so personally, I love it. Like we are very critical on, like Mike said, but there's no way in hell that we think that this is a bad game. Nope. We still think this is a fantastic game. But there's some certain tweaks that maybe we would prefer that the developers would go in a little bit different of a route. Mm-hmm. So in that same vein, I'm sure we aren't the first people to kind of have these thoughts, but there is a comment section. We definitely want to hear your guys' thoughts as well. I believe there was a person when we talked about the most disappointing game that had a lot to say about Breath of the Wild, so I definitely want to hear his opinions on that as well. But yeah, so comment section, make sure we use it. Otherwise, if you want more game breakdowns from us as well, please let us know.
Yep.
And obviously that we don't have not everybody plays the exact same games, but we do have some friends like CJ that might be able to join us on game breakdowns where maybe I might not know as much about. So we will find the right crew to give you that game breakdown if you do suggest it. So
anything with shoot, bang, bang.
Pretty much.
Could be stuff with shoot, bang, bang. But yeah, so signing off. This is Nick,
Mike,
and Travis.
Adios.
Bye everyone.
Bye.